As I walked through the front door of our home, I called out to my wife of a decade, "Hi Carrie, your man's home." It was Friday evening, precisely 6 p.m. We try to avoid saying the typical, "Honey, I'm home," every time, so I occasionally switch it up, and Carrie does too. Tonight, I called out and glanced into the living room, no sign of Carrie. I made my way into the kitchen, but she wasn't there either. I passed through the living room and looked outside, wondering if she might be in the garden. No, she wasn't there. I started feeling uneasy. The house felt eerily quiet, too quiet. I called out again, louder than intended, "Carrie?" Her muffled voice responded from upstairs, "Sorry, honey, I'm up here. I just showered and am getting ready to go out." Heading upstairs, I peeked into the bathroom. There, my wife was applying a vibrant red lipstick. Her makeup was already done, and she had washed and styled her hair. She was wearing an elegant evening dress, a little black dress, LBD, but in red. She also had on high heels that matched the dress's bright red color. I'd bought this outfit and those shoes for her a few months back, and this was the first time I'd seen her wear them. Fortunately, there hadn't been any special occasion recently to use them. I approached her from behind, gently caressing her firm, gorgeous rear before planting a kiss on her neck. She looked at me through the bathroom mirror, smiling. "Honey, Gary, this isn't for you," she said. "I'm heading out with some friends from work. You remember, right? We talked about this, you said I could go out once a month. I got talked into going tonight, it was a last-minute decision." I stopped touching her and took a step back, quickly recalling, yes, now I remember. You mentioned wanting to spend the occasional evening with a work friend. She reassured me, "Honey, don't feel bad. I'll be home on time, probably around 11, maybe a bit later, we'll see. You'll come pick me up, right?" I nodded, "Of course, and I'll take you to that bar we discussed, the one I wanted to go to for my birthday." I thought for a moment and added, "Oh yes, the one with 3 different dance floors and restaurants. Isn't it called Sparkles?" She replied, "Yes, my love. Now, how do I look?" She stood up straight and spun around. I scanned her from head to toe, smiling in approval. She twirled once more and kissed me on the lips. "Okay, sweetie, time to go," she said playfully. I grinned, "Not just yet, if you're going out tonight, I want a little advance on the night." With that, I picked her up in my arms and carried her to the bed. We shared a passionate moment, and after climaxing, we lay together for about 10 more minutes, cuddling and exchanging sweet words. Eventually, we pulled apart, and Carrie freshened up, reapplying her makeup and lipstick. She then grabbed her leather jacket from the bedroom, put it on, and headed downstairs while I followed, admiring her sway. Once outside, she got into the car as I locked the door behind us. As we drove, we made casual conversation, complaining about our coworkers and their incompetence, and of course, grumbling about poor management. When we arrived at the bar, it was packed, cars and people were everywhere. I found a parking spot and leaned over to give my wife a kiss. She returned it, and soon our tongues met, but we eventually pulled apart. "Carrie, make sure you stay safe," I said, raising an eyebrow. She nodded, "Don't worry, my love," patting her purse and briefly touching her thigh, where I noticed a small but noticeable bulge. "Okay, sweetheart, be safe and have a great time. And remember, no chatting with strange men," I teased as she got out of the car. She turned back with a grin, "I'll do my best. Just don't forget to pick me up by 11, maybe earlier, I'll let you know." I watched her head inside the bar and then drove back home. Once there, I changed into something more comfortable, black jeans and a sweatshirt. I slung a belt over my shoulder and secured a heavy metal object so it wouldn't slip out. I strapped another item around my ankle for added security. I went downstairs, made a cup of coffee, watched some TV, and fixed myself a sandwich. After an hour, I checked my phone, no messages from Carrie yet. I sent her a quick text, asking how she was doing. Her reply came promptly, "Great, don't worry. We just finished dinner and are heading upstairs to dance. Don't worry, I'm only drinking soft drinks, my date's a bit annoyed by it, though. See you soon." She sent a selfie of herself sipping a can of Pepsi, with her date looking irritated in the background. It seemed he wasn't happy she was texting me. Everything seemed under control, so I had another coffee and continued watching a TV show. Throughout the night, I got a few updates from her, mostly selfies of her dancing and occasionally from the bathroom. Yes, she liked to enjoy herself while on a job, but only when it was with me. I texted back teasingly, "Tease." She replied with a laughing emoji. Around 20 minutes later, she sent a photo of herself with her date, his arm wrapped around her shoulders as he appeared to kiss her cheek. The look on my wife's face showed a forced smile. I could tell she wasn't enjoying his company. Checking the time, it was already 10:30 p.m., so I figured it was time to get ready. I sent a text to a friend who was aware of the situation and could assist if needed. Now, I suppose it's time to explain. My wife and I are what you'd call bounty hunters. We're hired to track down and apprehend criminals who the police either don't want or don't have the time to pursue. This case involves a man named Leroy Jones, a tall, muscular man who's been preying on women, either using date rape drugs or coercing them into drinking excessive alcohol, which he then uses to blackmail them. He owns a bar where he targets beautiful women, isolating them from their friends. His scheme often involves the help of bouncers and bar staff. 3 young women have ended up in the hospital in the last 6 months, and that's only the ones we know about. There could be more victims who haven't come forward yet. All of them were seen entering this bar, accompanied by friends, and then disappeared for hours. Tonight, Carrie is the bait, the honey trap. That little bulge in her dress. A knife. Another form of protection, a small gun. Yes, she's capable of using both. And yes, we're both former intelligence officers. If things escalate, my wife is fully capable of gutting Leroy like a fish. So, I'm not worried about her handling herself. I also messaged our police contact, kind of like our handler. All the texting and photos she exchanged with her date were part of identifying him for the operation. Our headquarters were conducting background checks on Leroy and his entire staff. The extra seductive pictures my wife sent were purely for me. You see, my wife has a very playful and daring side. She loves teasing me and making things exciting for us even while we're working on a case. It certainly keeps our lives interesting while we're on the job. Time was up, so I left the house and drove straight to the bar. As I looked around, I could spot 5 agent vehicles parked outside. I knew they were stationed there to cover any exits in case Leroy attempted to slip out. I walked into the bar, ordered a non-alcoholic drink, and started circling the first floor. I noticed several agents positioned at the exits. Then, I made my way upstairs, moving slowly around the dance area. I didn't spot Carrie and Leroy right away until I noticed he had her cornered in a booth. She wasn't showing any signs of resistance yet, she was clearly waiting for my arrival. I saw 2 glasses on the table, one looked like it had Pepsi in it, the other seemed to contain whiskey. I also noticed a man approach the table. He paused and appeared to take something out of his pocket. I pulled out my phone and started recording him slipping what seemed like a tablet into my wife's drink. As he turned to leave, I decided it was time to play the role of the outraged husband. I marched over to the table, standing there, waiting for him to acknowledge me. After a moment, he finally turned and asked, "Yes, can I help you?" in a rather arrogant tone. As a matter of fact, yes. "Stop putting your hands on my wife," I shot back. He looked back at me, then turned his gaze towards Carrie. "This is your husband? You said he was an accountant." Clearly, he hadn't expected a well-built man in his 60s to fit the accountant stereotype. Carrie quickly pulled away from Leroy, stepped over to my side, wrapped her arms around me, and gave me a kiss. "Yes, Leroy, this is my husband Gary. He's an accountant, but he's also so much more," she said, proudly. I glared at Leroy, who was clearly flustered. "Tonight isn't just about you, Leroy. It's about the 3 young women you entertained. All 3 are now in need of therapy and serious help. I saw your guy spiking my wife's drink. It probably annoyed you that she refused alcohol. Your man is already being escorted out, and it won't be long before he admits to helping you drug these women." Leroy fumbled, reaching for his phone, but my wife had already swiped it. Yes, she'd stolen it while he was distracted. "Sit down, Leroy. You're not going anywhere," I said as I started browsing through his contacts. I found his wife's number listed simply as wife. How original. By this time, a small crowd had begun gathering, sensing something unusual was going on. It's not every day you see the bar owner being manhandled. I dialed his wife's number. Leroy attempted to get up again, but Carrie pushed him back down, harder this time, slamming his head against the wooden wall behind the booth. "Hello, is this Mrs. Jones? Is your husband Leroy Jones?" I asked. "Yes," she answered, sounding puzzled and a bit anxious. "I'm sorry to disturb you at this hour, but I'm here at the bar with your husband, and I'd like to ask a personal question." She hesitated but agreed to hear me out. "Mrs. Jones, are you aware that your husband has been cheating on you for the last 6 months? Not only that, but the women he's been with are currently receiving treatment after he drugged them. I have evidence of this. My colleagues and I caught him red-handed trying the same thing with my wife tonight. I imagine he's done this numerous times." I held the phone away from my ear as Mrs. Jones erupted into a tirade, demanding I put her husband on the phone. Instead, I placed the call on speaker. "You cheating bastard, Leroy. I'm going to divorce you and take every penny you own. If what I'm hearing about you going to jail is true, I can't wait to see you rot there," she screamed. I provided her with the agency's phone number and the contact of a reputable lawyer. At that moment, 3 uniformed officers and 2 detectives who knew us stepped in, grabbing Leroy under his arms. He hadn't said a word since I arrived but now sneered, "Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. My friends on the outside will deal with you both. Your wife will end up in a brothel while you watch." As the officers turned him away, my wife and I simultaneously delivered a hard kick to his groin. As he crumpled to the floor, she brought her knee up into his face, resulting in a sickening crunch as his nose broke and several teeth were knocked out. The officers quickly cleaned up the mess, half dragging, half carrying him out of the building. Later that evening, the police report noted that Leroy had resisted arrest and accidentally fell down the stairs during an escape attempt. He was sentenced to 20 years in a maximum security prison. His wife took every asset he owned and generously donated a large sum to help the victims receive the best possible treatment. She fired all the staff and brought in her own people, mostly relatives. My wife and I often visit this bar now and are treated like VIPs, with special discounts on food and drinks. 2 weeks later, I got home on time, opened the front door, and called out, "Hi, sweetheart, I'm home." "Upstairs, honey. I'm getting ready." Carrie's voice floated down from the bathroom. I went upstairs, peeked into the bedroom, then slipped into the bathroom. There stood my wife, wearing a seductive black lace bra and panties, complete with garters and suspenders. She was also in black fishnet stockings, slightly bent over while applying dark lipstick. "Hi, Gary, darling. Go wait for me in the bedroom," she said, meeting my eyes in the mirror. I walked over, leaned in, and kissed her neck. "Gary, I'm already feeling hot and bothered. Your touch is driving me wild." "Let me finish getting ready," she whispered breathlessly. "Don't take too long," I teased, giving her one last stroke before stepping back into the bedroom, where I stripped down and lay on the bed, eagerly anticipating her.